All right, we're back on the death lineup. I just got home from watching 6th and 7th grade basketball, so my focus and my attention is right in basketball right now. No, it's rough. You remember what 6th and 7th grade basketball was like?
Yeah, that was. I mean, in the moment playing, I'm like, man, this is the hardest thing ever. But when you're older and you rewatch it, it's like, damn it, why didn't I do this X, Y, and Z? But then you go back to when you were in that age range. It's like, well, you couldn't because you weren't, mature enough or strong enough or good enough.
You didn't know enough.
You didn't know enough. Exactly. That's probably the main one.
Yeah, both of my stepsons, Asher and Felix, are playing for the first time. They were cut last year from the team as 6th graders, so it's a combined 6th and 7th grade team. As 6th graders, they did not make the team, so they tried out again this year. They worked pretty hard to make the team. I think it was really important for them, but they're still their first time really understanding how to play in a team environment. So big learning curve for them. And like you said, like I'm not very vocal with what they're doing, but there's certain things where I'm just like, when they come home, if you just decided to shoot it here instead of, shoot a fadeaway, which has a 0% chance of going in, maybe you get a foul. So it's just stuff like that, but it's fun. It's fun watching them.
I want to go watch them. You got to send me the schedule.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. It's usually though on a Tuesday or a Thursday, and it's early, so you would have to finagle your work schedule.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean they're gonna play. I think they're gonna do a summer camp, and they're gonna do some other stuff during summer, so it might be easier to figure that out. All right, but that's not why we are here. This is not the podcast that talks about 6th and 7th grade basketball. We are here to talk about the Warriors, who after yesterday, they beat the Mavericks to go 2-3 on a road trip that we were pretty sure they would go 2-3 on. But the key for us was if they could win that third game. And I had pointed out Atlanta as that possible third game, and they were terrible in that game. But I feel like, and you tell me if this is the temperature of the fan base and of Twitter, is after those first 3 games, it was they suck. They're not doing anything. But for whatever reason, after this Dallas win, there's like a rejuvenation in whether or not the Warriors can do something as we head to the playoffs.
That's the emotions they've been making us feel conveniently every time we record this podcast. Because if you remember, last time we recorded, they were coming off of a Milwaukee and Phoenix win. And we were like, yeah, 3-2, let's do it. But to your point, you said like Atlanta was like that swing game. I think they win that if Draymond plays.
Maybe, but they
really watching it just seemed like all the negatives that were in that game were just holes from not having Draymond.
I think good Draymond, he probably makes a difference. John Collins is probably not shooting so many uncontested 3-pointers.
That was crazy.
But you're probably right. But at the same time, it's like Draymond, my guy. Like, how about we just not get these technicals, knowing that the next game we're going to get suspended, and it's 8 games or 10 games or 13 games, whatever it was at that point left in the season. Like that's a thing, right? The Grizzlies had to do that yesterday, I think, where Dylan Brooks missed a game because for the same
he missed
reason.
Another one. He's at 18, so he had to miss one at 16 or 15 or 16, and then he had to miss another one at 18. That guy's just racking them up. I feel like there's a bigger conversation though on Twitter right now that I've been trying to point out this season in terms of the refereeing specifically this year. I don't know if I paid attention more this year, but it definitely feels like there's more anger from the fans and specifically from the teams.
It seems like every fan base has an argument against the referees, but then if you see the call disparity, it's like some of those teams who get all the calls are the ones who are crying the loudest.
Dallas, keep your mouth shut. Lakers, keep your mouth shut. The rest of us have a case. But even team-wise, like Nick Nurse has come out and said something. Fred VanVleet came out and said something, and then that referee got demoted.
Yeah.
Monty Williams has said something twice now, but I don't feel bad for Monty at all. Like that, they have Chris Paul and Devin Booker, who are just the ultimate like foul grifters. I don't feel bad for Monty, but no, it just feels like more and more teams have had something to say about the refs. Mark Cuban, good old, doing the protest.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mainly was like, okay, what's the average amount of years of experience for all the refs? Grab that average, and I got there's actually data, which is pretty cool for all this stuff. And I came to 12.5 years for this specific season, but then I realized how long it took me to do that, and I was like, I don't want to do that for all the years. That takes way too long. But there is something there. I'm serious. Like this specific season, I said it a little bit in a previous podcast. I'm not sure if it was last podcast, but I think, I think the referees kind of enable the players in the way that, like I said, there was this one quote that I always keep bringing up that could totally be incorrect, and I've just had it wrong my entire life. But I think it was Messi, the soccer player, who was like always getting fouled in soccer games, never getting the call. So he just decided to start flopping, and it worked.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that's kind of how it is in the NBA too. A lot of guys like Stephen Curry don't get fouls. And, I feel like Steph is a pretty bad flopper. I feel like he's not that good at it because
He's really bad at it. You know what else
he's
he's
really
bad
bad at
at?
flopping.
He is bad at contorting his body to make the shot harder so that he gets the contact. If he missed a lot of those shots, I think he'd get the foul call. The fact that he makes all of those shots, he doesn't get the whistle because they're
Yeah.
waiting to see if he's able to get that in. And I think if he missed a lot more of those, he'd get the whistle. The refereeing thing, I feel like it was really bad about 10 or 15 years ago. And if you've read about the Tim Donaghy, all that stuff, like you understand why. But you mentioned the data. Now there's more data, there's more replays, there's Twitter accounts, there's stuff where you can actually go back and watch the tape and see. So they're under more scrutiny than ever. Specifically this season, I kind of wonder about two things specifically. Every year at the beginning of the season, they call the game a little bit closer. They want to reinforce some things. And if you remember this year, it was the travel, right? Jordan Poole was getting like 2 or 3 travels every single game, and they were searching for travel violations. And so I think that
Carrying
made,
too.
I think, and carrying, that's another one. And I think that made a lot of the players super aggressive towards the referees. Like, oh, you're trying to take away a part of my game, which is the reason why I'm a really good player. The second thing is we have, and this was more so in the James Harden era, but James Harden would hunt contact with his body, and he was so physically strong he could play through the contact. You see it in Luka. Luka searches out for the contact, and so those guys are really hard to referee. Giannis just can go through any contact that is there, and he's ripping through arms and legs and bodies, makes him really hard to referee. Shaq was similar in that, but I won't even say similar. Shaq had a similar result, but in a different way. It's because he would get the ball in the post, and 3 people would go at him, and he'd get hacked on the arm, but he was so strong to play through it, he didn't get the whistle either. So I think there's a few different things. I don't know if this is something that the NBA needs to go, like, sort of go back and tweak, and maybe they are. I'm sure they're always looking to improve, but the guys are bigger, faster, and stronger than ever. And then you have this other piece where they're kind of playing like soccer players, right? Where they're just so physical, and when they do get hurt, like you see, Lucas thing last night was the head goes back. Like any sort of contact to the body, he sells it with the head because he doesn't want to sell it with the body because he's dribbling. So he sells it with the head. And
Poole
so
does it sometimes too. It's
Poole,
just
Poole does it too.
it's like ingrained in them. It's what they've learned to do because it's worked. Devin Booker too. There's so many photos of Devin Booker mid drive with his eyes closed and his mouth like wide open, flinching, because like that's just what he's just like taught himself to do on every single drive, is to sell contact, even though it might not be there. And to all their credits, like I'm sure they do get fouled a lot, but at the same time, it's like now they've just started doing it even when they don't get fouled. And that's the frustrating part. And that's
where the referees don't want to get conned, right? Because that is the one that's going to screw them up in the public eye the most, is when they call a foul when the foul is not even there. So that's a hard one. They have a hard job. You would hope that, this would be something that the NBA wants to make sure that they get right. And hopefully they do, and they will. And I think the referees themselves do generally a pretty good job. You can see the ones who are a little less or a little bit more sensitive to the players and the frustrations, and you can, there's a certain referee, I forget, he's the guy with the slick back hair who I hate when the Warriors play because
Scott Foster?
no, it's not Scott Foster, it's
Oh
another
no.
guy.
Yeah. I
I
know who you're
forget that
talking
guy's
about.
name, but
Yeah.
you could tell like he's searching for the Warriors, any Warriors players to get mad at him, and he's really quick on the text and stuff. So it's an issue, but it's always sort of been an issue. I'm sure you can go back to the Wilt Chamberlain days where Wilt would say, these
Yeah.
referees, but it's an
I mean,
ongoing thing.
there's some Twitter statisticians that I would be interested if anyone's ever listening to this podcast. A stat I would be interested in is in the last 2-minute report, they in the last 2 minutes, I think the game has to be within 5 or something like that. They tell you what calls they got right and what calls they may have missed or gotten wrong, I believe. I would be interested to know like their average of getting them right as opposed to previous years. If that's lower, if that's higher, if I'm going crazy, I don't know. But my point with bringing up this whole ref thing is I feel like Draymond's usually like right in a lot of the stuff he argues about, but he's just emotional and he's loud and he gets the tea. Like this last game against the Mavericks, like he tried to take a charge on Luka and it got called, or it was not Luka, maybe it was a different player, Christian Wood, I think it's Christian Wood, and he got called as a block and he gets up and I'm like, this guy's about to get a tee, but you look at the replay and it's a charge. It's like, or it's a no call. It's like, how is that a block?
Well, the bad one was the loose ball foul on Jordan Poole from last night.
That was awful.
Where he and Luka are both. Is it Luka who he was going for the ball with? And he jumps up to go for the ball, and he sees this giant 6'7", 240-pound dude, and so he kind of protects himself in the collision because he's the smaller man, and he gets called for the loose ball.
That's just a no call. Right?
It shouldn't be a call, but we've actually seen some more loose ball violations of late, and I just wonder if it's because they're just so concerned about the players who are initiating the contact. So Jordan initiates the contact because he's friggin' athletic and he could get to that basketball where, it's probably a lot of players can't get to it. So it's interesting. And we'll see how, as the league gets further and further out, as the evolution, the players are only going to get more talented and more athletic, and they're going to have to figure out, I don't know if it's adding a fourth ref, because back in the day they only had 2, then they added a third. And so is it adding a fourth ref? Is it adding an extra pair of eyes to help with these replay shenanigans? I don't know. We'll have to figure that out, and we'll see.
Can I start the show with something?
Yeah.
Or now we're kind of a couple minutes in. But last show, I brought up a potential lineup that I wanted to see play.
Kuminga, Draymond, and Looney in the same lineup, right?
No. It was Steph, Clay, DiVincenzo, Kuminga, and Draymond.
Okay.
And I brought up the stats as of March 15th, which was 8 days ago, the day we recorded the show. They were a minus 26.6 on 44 possessions, 56.4% from effective field goal percentage on offense, which is, I think, was like a 92 or 95 percentile out of all lineups, which is really good. And then as of today, March 23rd, they're a minus 23.3 on 86 possessions. So what I did get right is that Kerr went to that lineup a lot. Because only 44 possessions as of last week, and now they're at 86 possessions as of this week. They doubled it basically, and something that was available for most of the season. Now they're minus 23.3, so only a plus 3 in that time, or plus 3.3 in that whole week. 59.4 effective field goal percentage on offense, which is the 97th percentile in all offenses, which is insanely good. 99 percentile in points per possession, insanely good, but they are 64.9% effective field goal percentage, specifically on defense. So they're allowing 64% of their opponent's shots to go in, which is the 0 percentile, the worst. Want to know something funny though? I was like, what happens? All right, what happens if we take Clay out and put JP in? Switch Clay with JP, plus 59.
Oh wow.
On 24 possessions.
Yeah. So I wonder if they will, because they were obviously seeing something there, and I wonder if they saw the same adjustment as you, which is you substitute JP for Clay, and you're probably going a little bit faster on offense. You're attacking the basket a little bit more, but then on defense, you're obviously weaker with JP.
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument to be made about the Clay defense this year. How it's pretty bad. But yeah, ideally, yeah, Clay's supposed to be a better defender than JP. What I want to see is the Steph, Clay, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond lineup. I want to see what that one looks like when everyone's back, because I think that could be really good. But at the same time, then I'm sure the Warriors would probably be like, well, let's just switch GP with Kuminga. You know, GP's they rely on him. They like him more.
I
I don't
mean,
know.
you could, if Kuminga is shooting the basketball well,
You could put
you
GP
could
instead of
you could play them
Clay.
together, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Man, and the Cole Kuminga shooting threes thing, like to me, it looks obvious that the coaches are telling him, and I think Steve might have said it himself, or if someone from Plus Minus said it, but they don't want him to shoot to start the possession. They want the ball to swing around a couple times, then find them on a catch and shoot. And I bet his catch and shoot numbers have been great, because I honestly trust it every time the ball gets swung to him. I just don't trust it when he is bringing the ball up and like kind of just dribbling, seeing for an offense to start creating himself, because they're off of him by like 15 feet. And they're just gonna like try to Draymond him into shooting that shot, what Draymond does to opponents in the playoffs specifically. So I think but it's when it's swung back to him on a catch and shoot, he hits that thing. Like I trust him hitting that shot, and the numbers prove it. I mean, he's at 36% right now.
I very much trust him in the corner. I don't know what his
Yeah.
percentage is in the corner, but he looks so much more comfortable shooting that. And you know what? Draymond gets this too, where the defense sags off of him. And I would love to hear Draymond telling Kuminga what to do in that moment, because the difference is I don't think the other teams are as scared of Draymond driving and finishing as they are with Kuminga. Because if he does, let's say he has the ball at the top of the key and he just goes, I'm not going to shoot this wide open three. All he has to do is take one step, because he's got a giant step, and that defense is going to react to him, because they don't want him to just pipe one, off of a two-step and a dribble. And I wonder what happens if he does that and where the defense goes, because he did this, I think it was to Anthony Lamb last night, where he like whipped a pass for a wide open three to Anthony Lamb. And I think it was solely because the defense, they got dunked on 5 times and they were like, okay, we need to defend this thing. And he whipped it out to Lamb. So there are opportunities for him to play make in those situations. Going back a couple games, the Clippers game, Russell Westbrook decided to not shoot as much as he did when the Warriors would sag off on him in the Lakers. And instead, he would drive and he would bump bodies in the middle and he would set up shooters. And I thought he played really well. It's kind of bummed that he did, because I was like, oh man, now we're gonna have to play a little bit differently if he plays this way against the Warriors. So there's something there for Kuminga to actually be a playmaker out of that situation and out of that scenario, because his first step is really good, and they're not going to want him to get that close, because then all he has to do is jump, and then he has these long arms and he just kind of scoops it in. So they're going to want to stop that. And the person whose side comes to try and stop that, there's probably going to be an open shooter right around the corner.
Yep. Kuminga has been doing something that's kind of silly. I don't know if he did it last game, and I know he did it in Houston and almost every single game before that for like the past 5 games. I don't think he realizes that sometimes he catches the ball and he's wide open in the paint. And
Yeah.
you see what I know I'm talking about? Then he just kicks a corner.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it is Jordan Poole, but okay, it is Clay, but you have a shot that's wide open.
In his mind, he's thinking,
there must be someone
if there are people here, then there's someone open. And he's just, and instinctually it's great. Someone needs to tell him, dude, you're wide open.
Wide, yeah.
Yeah. So let's actually talk about that game a little bit more. The Warriors win the fourth quarter. They never really pulled away. And I was frustrated, but it's the type of frustration that fans have, and I'm sure that the coaches have, when you have to guard Luka. And I think there's probably multiple ways to do this, but the ways that we saw last night were he he would do the one-on-one stuff, and at some point, and I don't know when this point happened, but then they would trap, and they would try to get him to make a play off his back foot, or they wanted the other players to beat them, obviously. The other way to do that, though, and this is something that Marcus Thompson has been on pretty much the whole season, which is let the other teams take hard twos instead of open threes. Reggie Bullock was the best three-pointer in the history of the NBA last night. And it was only because he would go to a spot, the Warriors would trap, and they would leave him wide open. And he was just splashing all those shots. And it made me think like the game plan cannot be Reggie Bullock wide open three-pointers. Like that can't be what the game plan is, but that's what Luka turned the game plan into. And then I wondered like what would happen if they just played him one-on-one. They might have more foul trouble if that happens, and maybe when Wiggins is back, maybe that is the plan. But Luka spends so much time with the basketball, and he's so methodical. And some of these twos are really, really hard. As you could tell, he was pretty gassed last night in the legs, and so he didn't have a lot of good finishing touch around the rim, probably because of the lower body. He was so tired. But I was just like, why don't we just defend the three? Let Kuminga guard Luka one-on-one and just tell him to stay home and have Luka shoot over him. And if he makes them, he makes them. But I'd rather have those hard twos than these wide open back-breaking threes that just did not allow the Warriors to extend that lead past. I think it got to 8 points, and then there was like 2 back-to-back wide open threes, and they were right back in it and tied the game. So that had to be frustrating for the team. Luka's a really hard guy to play against. But how would you guard him? Like, what did you want to see the Warriors do against him last night?
It was more one-on-one. I keep seeing, like I think Kuminga had him one-on-one, and then Clay runs up to try to get the double off, and it just felt like we didn't need some of that sometimes. It felt like you could let Kuminga play straight up. I get the foul aspect,
Yeah.
but, that's probably a really valid aspect that I should have thought of that I didn't necessarily think of, is that Kuminga's, kind of racks up a lot of fouls pretty quickly, and Luka's really good at getting fouls, so that's just not a match made in heaven. But I still think that you give him an opportunity because he is your best perimeter guard, not perimeter guard, but guarding the perimeter with Wiggins out and GP out. So I think I don't know. It's just, I think those double teams and people sinking in just allowed for that offense to get going. Jaden Hardy, man, he was hitting. Reggie
Yeah, him
Bullock was
and
hitting.
Bullock were just, they turned him into the Splash Brothers because they were so wide open.
So maybe what I would have said is, okay, how about the guy who's on Jaden Hardy? You don't sink in, right? That just felt like whoever was on him was the one who was sinking. I think all of his 3-pointers, who we love our advanced analytics. Go check how many were, contested. I feel like it were none of them.
None of them.
So, him and Reggie, it's just like, okay, if you're gonna double off the guys who maybe haven't proven they can hit this game yet. Maybe they're still a little cold. I guess the counter to that is, well, let's not warm them up. But I mean, let's not give the guys who are already hot and warm another opportunity.
Yeah, it was another Fitz moment of, oh, Hardy's having the best night of his life. And I'm like, this dude is wide open. And why don't we call
He's an
out
NBA
why
player
he's wide open?
There's a Hardy argument. I talked to your Mavs buddy about Hardy because I liked Hardy. We watched him in the G League.
Brian Zillum.
We watched him in the Wiseman's game in Santa Cruz at Chase Center, Santa Cruz Warriors at Chase Center. But, Jaden Hardy has that mentality that like he's a guy, that like he is this shot creator. You can't mess with his confidence, kind of like, how we thought Jordan Poole was, maybe still is, but, specifically last year and the year before, how Jordan Poole just had this insane amount of confidence. That's kind of how Jaden Hardy is. So I feel like Jaden Hardy playing with Luka specifically, how Luka, if you're Justin Holiday, if you're Reggie Bullock, like you're specifically a role player and you're a 3-and-D guy. So when you when you miss the one thing you're supposed to do, like I'm sure it can get in your head, and I'm sure Luka getting mad at you can get in your head. But when Jaden Hardy's like, I don't give a F what you guys think about me, I'm pulling this thing. I feel like that's like a good mentality sometimes to have when playing with a guy like Luka, like LeBron. That's why JR was so great with LeBron until he had that one moment in the finals. But yeah, I think I like Jaden Hardy a lot, and I like his confidence. And I wanted the Warriors to take him. I have a tweet out there. I was like, I hope the Warriors take Patrick Baldwin Jr. and Jaden Hardy. And I got one of them right. But man, that would have been nice to have Jaden Hardy.
You wouldn't really remember this too much, but you probably heard people talk about this. When the Warriors beat the Mavericks in 2007, the We Believe team, what they did, and this is a little bit different because Dirk and Luka play a little bit differently. Dirk was more in the post. And so they would set up a play and they'd throw the ball to Dirk in the post. And, he's dribble back, dribble back up, dribble back up. And right when they thought he was about to shoot, then they would bring the double. And so he would either have to shoot over two people or he would have to hurriedly pass out because he was being trapped. And I don't know if you can do that because the game is so spaced out these days. But I wish that trap on Luka came maybe a second later, or anticipating maybe they shade him into an area.
Do you remember what they did in the playoffs? This past playoffs?
Well, I mean, it was Wiggins, but what did I forget what they did.
So Luka would always try to get Steph or JP on him. So he'd bring his guy up to get the Steph switch, and then Steph would heavy show for like 1.5 to 2 seconds and just make a little bit of contact so Luka thinks that's his guy, and then sprint back to his guy who's on the roll or maybe on the pick and pop, and then Wiggins will get back in front. Yeah. That defense worked perfectly, and I can imagine that's what they're going to do again.
Yeah, and
the Kyrie Irving piece negates that. That's why you have Kyrie Irving, to not allow that stuff like that happen.
Well, what it does though is it turns Kyrie Irving into the Jaden Hardy or into the Bullock spot, and he's a better shooter than both of those guys. But then, like you said, you just got to make sure that that's the guy that doesn't help, because you got to keep an eye on him specifically. But it's a nice puzzle for the Warriors to figure out. I just watch them and their rotations just do not seem great. Like there's always a guy who seems to be in the wrong spot on the rotation. And maybe some of it is just that, they've had a few injuries here and there. Guys are not always playing with the same lineups, and you're not 100%, and not having Iguodala there as like sort of a leader defensively too, that probably doesn't help. But one player who should help is GP2. And Anthony Slater said that he's supposed to practice on Saturday. So the Warriors have a game on Friday against Philadelphia. Joel Embiid. This is the only time coming to San Francisco this year, I believe. One of the front runners to win the MVP. So Philadelphia comes into town. The Warriors will practice on Saturday. GP is supposed to practice, and there's a possibility that he can play Sunday, which is, I think it's going to be a nice shot in the arm. This isn't going to be like a new player to the team where they don't understand how to fit and all that stuff, which is what happens when you trade for guys, because he was on their team last year. So I think it's going to be a nice, successful transition for him back into the team. It's going to take minutes away from probably Moody. We've seen Moody get a few minutes of late, so he's probably losing those minutes. I would imagine DiVincenzo loses a few minutes here as well. But I don't know. I think I'm excited. I hope that he's healthy, not just like barely healthy, because I think he definitely matters. And the one thing that with Kuminga's dunks, a lot of Kuminga's dunks come off of his own creativity. We haven't seen the alley-oop as a big thing this year as much, even though you had Wiseman, right? Like Wiseman and Kuminga should be those guys who are just always ready for that spot. GP plays that dunker spot better than both of those guys. So I think we'll see some of that action again with those two, with GP.
I'm so excited for athletic GP. Yeah, like you said, that dunker spot, he plays it so well. And I've, said multiple times that I think GP2 is the best guard defender in the entire league, like best 1s and 2s defender. Obviously you think Drew Holiday, but I think Drew Holiday is like an overall defender is probably better, being able to guard like 1 through 3, maybe 1 through 4 for Drew. Whereas GP, if you put him on a 1 and a 2, that guy's not scoring, specifically a point guard. Like, not that he's not scoring, but he's getting the best defense he's ever gotten in his life. Like the way GP plays defense on point guards is just like, I don't know what I'd do if I was a point guard. So I'm super excited to have a guy like that back, because what have we been struggling with? What's our defensive rating? It's not like, I don't think it's below 20 out of the 30 teams, but it's probably around there. So,
I think they're like in the middle.
Yeah, I think they're.
But at home, they're great defensively. It's the road that they just suck so bad defensively. I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
A couple other things out of that game. In the fourth quarter, they decided to not settle for threes. I don't know how much of that was also really not letting Clay kind of be the starter of the offense and really making the ball just be in Steph's hands constantly. But they did not get three happy. They only took open threes. You saw Anthony Lamb hit a couple, and they were trying to get to the basket, including that last play in the game where Steph, I think there was a screen, and then there was another screen. Kuminga was coming on the other side, and Steph didn't use that screen and just went one-on-one against Kleber. And I think I think Luka was supposed to step up and help, but he didn't. He was so tired. And Steph just goes in for a nice easy layup to kind of put the lead out there. And I love seeing that play instead of this setup to get an open three. I'm comfortable with Steph going to the hole and shooting a shot that may be a little hard and contested, but I'm more confident in that Steph shot right now late in the game than a Jordan Poole three-pointer or an Anthony Lamb three-pointer, and sometimes even a Clay three-pointer, depending on what Clay we're getting. Like, because some of those games, what was the game? Was the Houston game where Clay was scorching? One of those games, he was like just on fire.
The Phoenix
And
game.
in the Phoenix game too, but there was one recently. I think it was the Houston game where he was just hot. And yeah, it's just like let's do the things that we know when we need to get a bucket. It's the creativity and drawing up these offensive plays. It's good. Like we have open shots, but I like that. And then the other thing is they started. I think this was part of it. And when I finally caught up to the live TV, I sent you and our buddy Ben Cruz a text, and I said they need to get Luka in the action because he's so tired and he's complaining to the refs, which is why you knew that he was pretty tired. And so that last play, getting him in the action, I think that's how we talk about defending him and stopping him. Getting him involved on defense is another way to kind of play him because getting him tired, getting him in foul trouble, getting him bothered. Now, getting him bothered, then he starts, pulling up with these fadeaway three-pointers that go in. But I think, defensively, they if they played, they're probably not playing the Mavericks again in the playoffs, but I think they would get him into more action on the defensive end
Yeah,
because
they did
it
that.
works.
They did that last year. They did that to him last year. They did that to Ja last year. They did that to Jokic last year just to try and get those guys tired. So, and it worked. So, yeah, I think that's a recipe for success. And, we should talk about, did you have anything after this plan? I was thinking we should talk about well, I mean, we should talk about their upcoming opponents, but also plus minus started talking about it a little bit today. And I feel like I've talked about it a little
Who do you
last
want to
week.
play in the playoffs?
Who do you want to see?
Yeah. No, it's on the docket. It's definitely
It
on
is?
the docket. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Do you want to do that right now?
Yeah, let's do it right now. Before
right.
we go there, I just want to mention Thompson to Clark did a podcast with Darren Chan, KMBR, San Francisco Giants radio engineer, and someone who's just knows the ins and outs of the Giants and the sports business and everything. And Brad's out, so we recorded that. It went up early yesterday, so definitely check that out. Or early this morning for people watching on video, yesterday for people listening on audio. But yeah, that was a really good podcast. So I just wanted to mention that before we move on.
Was that your ad? Was that your ad read for the segue? You always do like some ad reads before each topic for in the middle.
No,
of the
I mean those are like built-in interviews that I have to create space.
No, I
for,
know.
but
I'm just saying you just did a live ad read.
no, yeah, I like doing live ad reads actually. Okay, so let's talk about this playoff situation right now. With 8 games left, the Warriors are 38 and 36. They sit a half a game behind the Clippers. That is notable because Paul George is out. We think 2 to 3 weeks minimum. And they're only a game behind the Suns. And as we know, Kevin Durant is out. They are a full game ahead of the Timberwolves. They are a full game ahead of the Thunder. They play both of those upcoming. And they are a full game and a half ahead of the Mavericks, the Lakers, 2 games ahead of the Jazz and the Pelicans. So that's where they stand in the number 6 spot. If the highest they could get is 4, and if they got to 4, they would have the home court advantage in the first round. Realistically, are they able to get to 4? I feel like Phoenix has some rough games coming up. Thankfully for the Warriors, 5 out of their last 8 are home. Is the 4 spot realistic for this team?
I wouldn't say it's unrealistic, but I'm not sure if I'd say it's realistic. What are they? It's just a game, right? It's just a game out of the 4 seed.
There are 2 more losses for the Warriors. They have the same
They played 2
total
more
of wins.
games. Yeah, I don't think it's especially like I think Phoenix is gonna have one of those chip on their shoulder games where it's like, we feel cheated out of a win, so we're gonna go in and kick the next team's butt. But hey, they've been losing lately. Like they had a close game with Orlando that they almost lost. They lost to OKC. They lost to LA. Like, when you give up, when you go trade for Kevin Durant, you have to give up a lot of your core pieces. And they did with Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson and Jay Crowder, who hadn't played this year. And you get back Kevin Durant. And guess what? Kevin Durant's not playing. So you're still missing KD, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and Jay Crowder. And you're going to be worse. So do you have Phoenix's schedule? I feel like we can maybe predict some games.
All right. So here are the next. Well, they only have. Do they have 6? Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4.
No, they
5,
should have
6, 7,
more.
8.
No,
No, they have 10. They have 10.
Yeah.
Suns Kings tomorrow night.
Oh my God. Is that must watch? That might be must watch television because the Kings are on a 2-game losing streak.
Sixers go into Phoenix after they play the Warriors, but that's both teams are going to be back to back.
Hey, isn't that really quick before you read the rest? I think someone said on a broadcast, because I was listening to the Lakers Suns last night. Someone said something like the Suns have like 4 games in like the next 6 days or something like that. Like they kind of have one of those.
Friday, Saturday, Monday, Wednesday. So not quite, but it's Friday, Saturday, then a day off, Monday, day off, Wednesday.
Off. It's 3 games in 5 days.
Yeah.
Damn.
And then after that, then they got the Jazz on Monday. Probably pretty winnable at this point, though. Like I said, the Jazz aren't done. They're
they didn't get
right
in throwing the towel yet.
T-Wolves on Wednesday, then the Nuggets on the next Friday, and then the Thunder, and they're Thunder in the mix. But then again, everyone in the West is almost in the mix. They have a gimme with the Spurs, and then they have the Nuggets again. Then they have the Lakers, and then they have the Clippers to end the season.
Wow. If the Nuggets weren't playing so poorly right now, like I would be like, yeah, the Warriors are getting the 4 seed. Got to see the Nuggets twice. I'm going to say that the Suns might lose this Kings game, and they might lose this Sixers game, depending on who plays for the Sixers. Like, I think there's definitely some opportunity for the Warriors to sniff that 4 seed in the next 3 or 4 games, and then we'll see how the Warriors play on the road.
Okay, so my prediction is that the Warriors end the season 43-39. That's just, and I'm just basing it on their home road splits for the rest of the season, right? The Suns would only have to win 3 more games
to do better than that.
No, I'm sorry. 5 more games out of their 10. So they'd have to go 5-5, and the Warriors would have to go 5-3 to be tied. And I think Phoenix owns the tiebreaker there, I believe, because I think they beat the Warriors like
3 times.
Yeah. So that's the problem, in that if the Warriors had the tiebreaker, I think they could actually get there. But because they won't, then they're probably not getting there. But at the same time, if you do get to 4 or 5, it's going to be the Suns. So you're basically saying we want to play the Suns.
Mm-hmm.
The Clippers being a half a game above them, I kind of feel like I'd rather play.
I have an opinion. I think I have a lock too.
Chris Paul never beats us. That's the only thing I'm hanging on to, is Chris Paul hasn't beat Steph since 13.
I also think if there's a round that you want to see Phoenix in, I think it's the first round when they're still trying to figure out what their team looks like.
Do you want to get to the King? I don't know. Getting to the Grizzlies might be the best thing right now. I don't know. They're all the teams are good, right? the Warriors, there's no gimme in the first round for them, no matter who they play. If you get to 4, you're still playing the Suns. If you get to 5, you're playing the Suns. If you get to 6, you're playing the Kings. If you stuck at 7, you're playing the Grizzlies. There's no gimme. So it's really who you prefer from a matchup perspective.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know if this is a shocking take, but I actually don't want to see the Kings in the first round. I think that, we don't know what's happening with Wiggins. Let's say he comes back at the end of the season. We saw what happened this season when he came back from that long injury. It took him about 3 to 4 games to get back into that one game that he played really well against the Wizards. Then he disappeared again. So we don't actually even know if he would have had, if he was back. He just had one really good game. So I think that there's going to be, who's the team that's probably going to at least scheme the best against us as from a coaching perspective? It's probably Mike Brown. It's probably going to be the coach of the year, even though the Kings have bad defense. Like, I think Mike Brown is going to, coach his ass off in that series. And if there's I don't want to see a team that's been, has insane cohesion and has been playing together all season with little to no injuries in the first round, specifically when we're trying to find our stuff. We're trying to still find out what our best lineups are. We probably know what our best lineup is with that starting unit, but our second and third and fourth best lineups, I don't want to be figuring that out against a team who has their 10 best lineups already figured out.
But they may also be the butt cheeks Kings, though, because they've never been in this moment, right? Like, it's funny. Marcus and Slater made a thing that I didn't even think about, which is if you play Sacramento, what is the percentage of Warriors fans that are in that building?
I don't know, actually.
40%?
Those Sacs fans, yeah, I would probably lean towards 30, I think. How many diehard loyal Warriors fans are there at Chase? Like, not that many, right? It just feels like it's the rich people that in San Francisco that maybe that's speculation, but I feel like I've been to some games that I don't know. It just feels like that Kings arena just feels louder. Did you hear that? Did they boost the speakers on that Mavs arena last night?
I don't know.
It feels like the audio just went over the dB limit. It was just for I don't know. But and then I think another reason for the Kings is definitely the travel.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go from San Francisco to Memphis. You literally just drive. And yeah, I know that would be way easier on our players, their bodies. So I think there's definitely a lot of pluses to seeing Sacramento, which you've brought up in the sense of a team that's never been to the playoffs with this current regime. That's never happened where at least the past, since I've been watching basketball, where a team that's never been to the playoffs with their unit goes and wins a title. They might win a couple games, but I have a couple things for them. Kings fans are always talking about our offensive rating, it's the best of all time. It's been the best of all time. That's been broken every single season for the past 7 seasons, just because offense is becoming so much easier. I don't know about easier, but it's just more tailored to offensive games. So the Kings have the best offensive rating of all time. Impressive. But last year, there was the best offensive rating of all time. The year before that, someone broke the best offensive rating of all time. I think the second best offensive rating of all time is the KD year where he had his foot on the line against the Bucks, And then also De'Aaron Fox has the most clutch points of all time. That means they're in a lot of clutch games if he has to make a lot of points. So the top 5 clutch players of all time. I know the players, I forget the years. I believe it was Damian Lillard year after the bubble. It was DeMar DeRozan last year. It was Joel Embiid the year after the bubble, or last year. I'm just naming all these players that they all lost in the first or second round.
Yep.
Because if your team is going to so many clutch games and so many close games, odds are when you get to the playoffs, the team that's not getting to that many close games and they're winning out more are probably going to beat you. The defense is going to settle in, and they're probably going to beat you in the clutch. I don't know. I think Sacramento can be beaten pretty easily. I think they can get to the second round, and I think whoever plays them in the second round is going to beat them. I just, as a Warriors fan, I don't know if I want to see them in the first round as we're trying to figure our stuff out still. I think I'd rather see the Suns, which sounds crazy. Who wants to see KD in the first round? Because they're still trying to figure out what they got going. They don't know.
It's not even KD. Book has killed them this year.
Yeah, he has.
That would be the other thing. But they do not have the Steph stopper anymore in Mikal Bridges,
Mm-mm.
so that is a difference.
Steph is cooking.
Whatever the first round matchup is for the Warriors, it's probably gonna be the best matchup in all of the playoffs because they're gonna be playing a really good team, and there's gonna be a storyline in every situation. With the Kings, it's the little brother against the big brother storyline from the Northern California teams.
It's the what's that movie that you like, the UFC movie?
What's the UFC movie?
With it's with the guy who plays Venom, Tom
Oh, yeah,
Hardy.
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
What's that one called?
I
You showed
forget
me
what
that
it's
one.
called.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think did we go see it in theaters? That might be the only time I ever saw it though. Yeah, and then with the Grizzlies, it's the Grizzlies, they are also kind of the little brother, but in a different way, in that they talk like they're gonna win, and the
They want
Warriors
it so
have smacked
badly
them
too.
around. And look, I think Jaren Jackson is the new player that the Warriors just cannot defend, and he just creates so much frustration for them. So last year he was really good, but Draymond would just get him in foul trouble a lot, and he'd have to come out of the game. And he looks like a more mature player this year, but he also still has to stay on the court. And then, of course, Phoenix, you have Durant, you have CP, and that would be bonkers for the NBA. I think that's what
That
the
would
NBA
break
is
records.
probably rooting for, is that
Yeah.
series.
I wanted to see Clippers Suns because I thought that the Clippers might be able to take them out in the first round, but then PG went down. So who would you rather see if it's, let's say, scenario, the Warriors get the 4th seed? That's home court advantage against the Suns, who are the
Yep.
5th seed. Would you rather see that matchup, or would you rather see Warriors 3-6 against the Kings?
If
They
the
don't have
Warriors
home
could
court.
get to 4, I would get to 4.
Okay.
But if they have to play on the road, I think I'd rather play the Kings.
Okay. No, it's a fair take. I've been pooping. I don't want to use a bad word there, but I've been pooping on this Kings team the entire season in the sense of like I just didn't believe in them, and they just continue to prove me wrong. But I think if whoever their first round opponent is, let's say it's not the Warriors, if they beat them like 4-1, like they're legit, right? Like we have to be like, oh shit. Like, and then I used the bad word there. But it's like, oh crud, here comes like this team might be legit. I don't know. It's gonna be, I'm super excited for this playoffs because I think I said it last week's pod. Every single team in the West specifically has major question marks. The Nuggets, what the hell happened to them? They've lost so many games lately. Jamal Murray has looked down. You look at the 2 seed, the Memphis Grizzlies. I guess Jaw's finally back. I guess they're starting to look better, but they have a lot of question marks on their
They've
end
won
too.
4 in a
terms of
row.
Dylan Brooks, they have Dylan Brooks. The 3 seed, the Sacramento Kings, the team that's never been there before, has never gotten it done. The clutch thing too that I just talked about. The 4 seed, the Phoenix Suns, KD. I'd probably bet on the Phoenix Suns had KD played for the last 2 weeks to win the whole thing, not win the whole thing, but at least get to the Western Conference at the very least. That's a major question of how they're going to, figure their stuff out come the first round. They have to literally figure it out in the first round of the playoffs. At least when Wiggins comes back, he has to get back to speed. But at the same time, he knows his place in this team. That's important. 5th seed. Right now, it's the Clippers. They just ultimate butt cheeks of all time. They're the ultimate butt cheeks team
That
of all time.
they're the we always talk about the Warriors are just the ultimate 500 team. The Clippers are 19 and 17 on the road. I'm sorry, at home, 19 and 18 on the road.
They don't
They
really have
are
a
the
home court
ultimate.
arena.
They're the ultimate 500 team in this whole thing.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like I'm at the 6th seed for the Warriors now. We know they're question marks. We know they're legit. The 7th seed, with the Timberwolves or whoever's the 7th seed, like the Timberwolves have major question marks too. Every single team has question marks. This Western Conference Finals appearance is wide open. Anyone can get it, in my opinion. And I think with this Warriors team, I keep talking about how talented I think this roster is. Specifically, it's just a matter of getting your guys back. GP's finally coming back. If you get Wiggins back, I feel like every Warriors fan, I don't know if they should be like super optimistic because the Warriors have shown us every single time we record this podcast that we are excited because they just won 2 games, but they lost 3 games to get there. It's that's what they continue to do to us all year. But I think that it is really what do they struggle at? Defense and rebounding. What does Wiggins do? Defense and rebounding. And he could create his own shot and hit a 3-point shot too. Oh, it's almost like he was their second best player in the finals. That might be useful right now. I think it's night and day for this. I just think they needed like a center, and JaMychal Green is not that.
All right, let's look at these next few games here. Sixers, Warriors. Embiid, little dinged up. He probably wants to play on this national stage against the Warriors in San Francisco. That's going to be a tough game, but they are at home. Timberwolves on Sunday. They are at home again. Cat is back.
They
And
killed them when Cat was back.
And then Pelicans at home on Tuesday, Spurs at home on Friday. So that's the next 4 games for them. And then they go back on the road. Nuggets, they come back 1 for the Thunder at home. Then it's Kings and Trailblazers to end the season on the road. Do you sniff 5, or do you think they're just going to go 4-4 like they always go 4-4 and 2-2 and 3-3?
1, 2. I think they could win out at home. I don't know if that's a hot take because I'm just giving them the 76ers who have the MVP.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they won out at home and then they lost to Denver and then they beat OKC. I could see 5-3. I don't think that's. I mean, I don't think that's crazy. I don't think a 5-3 is crazy. What's going to happen though? You want to say it together?
4-4.
4-4.
4-4 gets them to 42-40 for the season, and that would probably still be the 6th spot at the very least. So
it could be
as long
5.
as they don't go in a tailspin and go 3-5 or 2-6, I think they're probably pretty comfortable where they are. But then again, this whole season has been unpredictable in a very predictable way of 500, but just unpredictable and sort of the ups and downs of how they play. All right. So that'll be it for this show. You're going on vacation soon. When are you going on vacation?
I think next Thursday.
Okay. So next Thursday, Warriors play Tuesday night. I don't know. We'll figure out if we can do another show with you for next week. And then I probably have to do one the following week with somebody else before you come back. And then by the time you come back, it'll almost be the playoffs.
Yeah, what the hell?
All right. I saw you had a little video from the BAM Twitter with your guest from you put the Rockets footage in the video on Twitter and everything. Who's the guest that you had?
Brado. He's kind of like him and his co-host. I feel like are kind of pretty popular on Rockets Twitter, kind of how Sam and Andy are for Warriors Twitter. It was a fun talk. He's around my age. I think it was a really good conversation too. So I mean, that was a couple of weeks ago. I probably already plugged it in this podcast.
Oh, okay. I just saw the video, so I thought.
Yeah, no, I'm just revisiting some of those old videos and clipping stuff to get them on the social platform.
All right, so we are done here. We'll be back next week. If I for some reason what I want to do is I want to bring Ben back on at least to talk next week. But we'll see. But we'll see if you can go.
Keeps going on light years.
Yeah, I know. Dude, that's his home, man.
Yeah.
But we'll figure it out. If I can't get Ben, I'll see if there's anybody else in the Warriors universe who may come on to do a chit chat with us. But otherwise, Bri will be off. We'll see Bri back when he gets back from vacation, unless we can sneak one in next week. So for Bri, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.